In the spirit of the Northwest, KATU presents Town Hall.
Did a UFO crash on this very site 50 years ago? I'm Jeff Gianola. Residents of Roswell, New Mexico say they saw alien bodies and the government is covering it up. Tonight on Town Hall, stay with us as we explore the mystery at Roswell.
And now, your host, Jeff Gianola.
For hundreds, perhaps thousands of years, we've looked into the night sky and wondered, is anyone out there? Some folks in Roswell, New Mexico claim to have proof that the answer is yes.
Something that was not of this earth.
We were accustomed to secrecy.
There isn't any question in my mind it was a government cover-up.
Roswell made headlines round the world in July 1947 when the military claimed it had recovered the wreckage of a UFO. This is the hillside on a remote ranch in the New Mexico desert where residents around here say they saw a UFO slam into Earth. Nearly 50 years later, it has created a storm of controversy. Walter Hott was a military public relations officer. He wrote the press release announcing the strange discovery.
Basically, all it stated that we had in our possession a flying disc.
Within hours, reporters from several countries were calling to find out more. It was a fascinating story. Several Roswell residents claimed to have seen some of the debris from the crash site.
There were scraps and pieces of metal, and the color seemed to be like the back side of a roll of aluminum foil, the dull side.
Then, as suddenly as the UFO appeared, it officially disappeared.
We were all wrong. It was a weather balloon. That's what General Ramey said. And the general knew more than the colonel did. So it became a weather balloon.
Judd Roberts says the military did more than deny the original eyewitness reports.
He was a famous trumpet man from out Chicago.
Roberts owned the local radio station. He claims he received threats from Washington to stop broadcasting the UFO story.
If we put any more mention of it on the air, we'll pull your license. Simple as that. Their thing was, don't do it, and so we just backed off of it just as hard as we could.
At that point, the Roswell UFO crash seemed to just fade away. The military's official silence, the silence of the residents here in Roswell, seemed to put an end to the story. But pictures like these kept the story going. Was the military covering up the discovery of aliens?
There was a total of 5 bodies altogether. I just saw 2 of them. One that was thrown out, and the other ones, I said one was half in and half out.
Frank Kaufman had left the military in 1947, but says he was working as a civilian in a secret military unit sent to the crash site.
The bodies, after they were examined by a special crew, they were placed in body bags and taken to the base hospital.
Not much remains of the original base hospital. Most of it has been torn down. But this is the area where they claim that what?
Well, claimed they did some autopsy work on the alien bodies.
Recently, these pictures were broadcast of the alleged autopsy, fueling speculation that the government has actual physical evidence of aliens, but is keeping it a secret. The speculation continues today, despite a definitive report released in September 1994 by the Air Force rejecting the UFO theory. Still, the report doesn't mean a thing to many people in Roswell. Do you think it was a government cover-up?
Oh yes, there's no doubt of that.
It was a very firm and in its own light, a very expert clamped down on some information. And they did a heck of a job on it.
Do you believe? Jeff Gianola, we're live in our town hall studio tonight, and it is a fascinating town hall. We have experts here to try to shed some light on this Roswell UFO incident, the mystery at Roswell. What really happened in July of 1947 out in the New Mexico desert? Was it simply a government spy balloon, weather balloon? Or did an alien spaceship crash land, leading to an elaborate military cover-up? Now, throughout our program tonight, we'll take you back to Roswell as we search for the answers. I want to show you something right now. The Roswell Daily Record, Tuesday, July 8th, 1947. There it is. It says that the Air Force captures a flying saucer on a ranch in the Roswell region. And I want to show you something else. Thick as a phone book. It's the Roswell report that came out last year. The U.S. government wrote this book, and it's the book to close all books on Roswell with this book. And we called the Air Force, and you're going to hear what they have to say about the Roswell incident. And we'll also show you this very controversial video from an alleged alien autopsy. We have some experts here who will shed some light. Is this for real or is it a fake? And we're going to talk to the man hired to find out whether this is authentic or not. That's his job, and we're going to hear what he has to say about it. But first, I want you to meet someone. He's a nuclear physicist and a top UFO researcher. Stanton Friedman joins us on our town hall hot seat tonight. Stanton, let me just ask you this right off the bat. Do you believe that the government is hiding evidence of UFOs?
Oh, there's no question we're dealing with a cosmic Watergate. And it has, it's entirely aside from the question of Roswell. We've been going after documents. Look, I've been to 15 government archives. I'm a nuclear physicist. I worked under security for 14 years. It's easy to prove, as a matter of fact. Everybody says, well, there's freedom of information. It took me 5 years to get this CIA UFO document, which you can read about 8 words. 5 years to get that. The National Security Agency admits it's withholding 156 to be technical, UFO documents. Their justification to a federal court judge for withholding it, they wouldn't even show any of them to him. This is their justification, and there's a little censorship. Then as you go through it quickly, it becomes, this is just the justification. He didn't get to see any of the documents. It's 75% blacked out. Anybody who says they're not withholding information is either lying or ignorant or both.
Let's ask our viewers. We have a special telepoll question tonight, and we want you to join us here on Town Hall. And here are the numbers to call. Is the government hiding evidence of flying saucers, UFOs? Yes, 733-5350. No, 733-5351. And we'll check those results at the end of Town Hall. I want to go to a man named Don Newman. Don, you're a UFO investigator of sorts. Is the government covering up evidence of UFOs?
Well, I'd have to say yes.
Well, let me get a microphone over there. We can maybe hear you. What would you say?
I'd have to say yes, only because I've interviewed some of the people here in the Oregon and Northwest area, and one of the people was the Sheridan Cavett individual that supposedly went out to the Foster Ranch, and when the researchers first got to him, late 80s, early 90s, he stated he wasn't even out there. Then when they went through the flight records, showed that he was on the base.
You think
there.
Too many inconsistencies?
Oh yeah, he constantly changed the story, and even to this day now, I guess in the report there, he stated that he's seen this 620-foot balloon array was supposedly mogul in a 20-foot circle. So
okay,
Jeff, story, I guess.
Let me get the timing right here. I began the research on Roswell back in 1978. The first book came out in 1980. So this late noise is unrelated to the early work. The witnesses, many of the witnesses, the key witnesses are dead. Major Jesse Marcel, the intelligence officer for the only atomic bombing group in the world. He was the first out on the site. Cavett was talked to in the early 80s. His story has changed drastically. So there's an enormous amount of evidence that was compiled long before the autopsy footage. That may have done more to cause discussion than anything else. But evidentially, the evidence has been there long before. Before the first book came out, William Moore and I, he was the co-author of the first book, The Roswell Incident, we had talked to 60 people. By 1985, it was 92 connected with this event. So this is an ongoing project. There's a lot of bandwagon jumpers. You just showed one of them on the air, Frank Kaufman. He got out of the service, I just got his record, in 1945, not in 1947. So there's a lot of 15 minutes of fame going on.
I see what you're saying. People jumping on the UFO bandwagon. Let's take a phone call right now. You're with us on Town Hall. Go ahead.
Hello.
Hi, there you are.
Okay. I just like to let you know, my brother-in-law was with the Air Force at the time in Durango, Colorado, and they were on a mission down in Roswell, and this was back at that time, and he admits that there was a cover-up, that he was helping on the cleanup of the aliens, and that is what drove him out of the Air Force. He had just come back from Spain with the Air Force, And when he was involved with that, he got out of the Air Force.
How can we find this brother-in-law?
Pardon me?
Stanton's asking, how can we find your brother-in-law?
I'd be happy to give out a number that you can call collect. I'm racing the undertaker.
Let's give that number out before the end of town hall. I want to show of hands here in the town hall audience. Who thinks the government's covering up someone, whether it's something? And just some quick responses here. Why? Why do you believe that?
Well, I believe they're covering it up because the UFOs don't use gasoline and oil, and they have power systems that we don't know about. So we're afraid of that.
So we're covering up. Who else thinks there's some kind of cover-up? Why?
Well, I'm not sure why, but I think it's pretty obvious that they are. I mean, you don't find a book that size from the government, you know, the Santa Claus report or the Tooth Fairy report. I mean, something's going on.
Well, guess what? We asked the government about this Roswell report, and we wanted to know what is going on about Roswell. And they let us record the conversation, and let's listen to that right now, the government response to the Roswell incident.
The Air Force compiled the Roswell report in response to some interest from the GAO, and we believe that the report speaks for itself.
We're doing a show this weekend, a one-hour show on Roswell, and I just wanted, you know, some kind of a comment from someone who'd, you know, worked on the report.
That probably isn't going to be possible today. I think that the findings in the report, Chris, are the Air Force's position on that. So you're not really going to get anything much beyond that.
That was our town hall producer, Chris Harrison, who talked with the Air Force, and you heard what the Air Force had to say about the Roswell incident. I want you to meet a man now, Cal Korff, who's written books about UFOs, spaceships, and other things, and you're an investigator and a researcher. Is there a government cover-up, Cal?
Well, there's no doubt that the United States government has not released all the UFO data. They've admitted they're withholding a lot of it, but I think we have to be careful when we start to speculate what may be in that data. We don't know, but the fact is they are withholding data.
It sounds like you try to be very objective. You don't come down one way or the other. You just, what?
The UFO issue isn't a religious issue for me. I believe that whatever the answer to UFOs are, we can only learn from that. What I mean is I think the UFO phenomenon is a combination or myriad of phenomena, and that every case must be taken on its own individual basis.
I want everyone to meet Steve Carey, who joined us. Steve, tell the folks what you do.
I teach critical thinking and philosophy of science at Portland Community College, and I must say right off the bat I'm no expert on Roswell. But
what about the whole issue of, it seems like different issues come up and everyone jumps right away, it's a government cover-up. I know you've dealt with that with your students before.
Yeah, I talk about it a lot, and it's always kind of amazed me that if you ask people a couple of questions, particularly about UFOs, if you ask them how many of you believe that the UFOs have either contacted or visited Earth, a certain percentage, I asked 105 students this week, and just over 50% said they thought that rated that fairly likely. If you ask them how many of you believe that the government is covering up information about such contact, you always get about 10 percentage more, points more.
Interesting.
I think a lot of this is fueled by the fact that people are, you know, they're really sort of seduced by theories that involve some kind of mystery, that involves some
Stanton
sort of
says the mystery of it all.
Yeah, precisely.
I think we have a skeptic on our town hall line. Hello, you're with us here on Town Hall.
Hi.
Hi.
Yeah, I was 12 years old watching UFOs flying over the schoolyard in San Francisco in 1944. They were identified later on as weather balloons. And for every one of these so-called sightings, there's an obvious reason for them. And if the government were hiding it, I mean, we're spending billions of dollars exploring space. Aren't we looking for extraterrestrial beings? It's ridiculous. These guys are nutty.
Wait a minute.
Stanton,
just a minute now. He's asking the wrong question. Most UFO sightings can be explained. That's certainly true. Babe Ruth didn't hit a home run most of the times he went to bat. Does that mean he never hit one? A basketball coach knows most people aren't 7 feet tall. Some are. In the largest study ever done for the United States Air Force, obviously not a believer in flying saucers, 21% of 3,200 sightings couldn't be identified, completely separate from the ones for which there was insufficient information or the ones that they could identify. So you got to ask the right question. Are any UFOs alien spacecraft?
That
yes.
makes it.
Are most? No. Who cares?
What are basketball players and football?
What I'm saying is you're reasoning that because most sightings can be explained.
Have athlete's foot. I mean, what does that mean? I mean, those are ridiculous assumptions. You could make cases of ridiculous things.
What you're saying, what you said to begin with, is that since most sightings can be explained, therefore all can be. I'm saying that's foolish reasoning. The real world doesn't work that way. Most isotopes aren't fissionable. When I want to build a reactor, I use the ones that are. If you look at the large-scale scientific studies, studiously avoided by the debunkers, there are 11 debunking books, not one mentions the largest study ever done, even though all the authors were aware of it. The reality is very different from the proclamation by the noisy negativists.
I want to bring in our NASA expert here. Tom Hanna joins us. Tom's been on Town Hall before. Tom, you've been patiently listening to all this. What's your take on this whole thing?
Hello.
Well, I believe...
Aliens.
Yeah, they're here. Well, I believe that as far as the word UFO, or letters UFO, unidentified flying object, there are definitely things people see that don't have any answers for. As far as many sightings that have been seen, and if they were to account for the fact of being actual flying saucers, and if the government has captured these, though, if it's the military, NASA's never ended up with any of it. I think I mentioned this before. I think our technology in the space program would be a little bit more advanced than it is today, using a space shuttle that was designed in the 60s. NASA has never dealt with UFOs other than the fact that they are involved at times with the search of extraterrestrial intelligence. We just like to know if there is any radio signals in outer space. So far to this day, we're listening.
You're waiting for the proof.
Yeah.
Oh, Steve Carey, the thing came up. Operation Mogul, a government program called Operation Mogul, which they now say is the official explanation for what happened at Roswell. The government says that. What was Mogul?
Okay, first of all, I don't know if that's the right explanation or not. It seems to me quite likely it is. That's all I'm prepared to say. I think that these gentlemen would
never
agree.
Some sort of it was some sort of spy program for viewers who might know. Mogul, what was it? Spy balloons?
Mogul was a long chain of balloons that used devices to test whether the Russians were conducting nuclear tests or might
listening
be exploding
for the
a nuclear
sounds
weapon.
of them.
Right.
A constant altitude balloon, conventional balloons, the purpose was highly classified, was never much of a success. It's hard to hide a 600-foot string of balloons.
But they said later that the wreckage that they found in the pictures, those are the debris of some of those balloons from Operation Mogul.
If I can, I think, given what I've read about the first reports of the wreckage said that there were things like aluminum foil, something that appeared to be tape with some kind of hieroglyphics on it, some
not tape with hieroglyphics.
Sticks.
No, that's the new interpretation. Okay. That's the Mogul interpretation. The original, if you talk to original witnesses, as I have, Major Marcel, his son who handled pieces and so forth, who's a medical doctor and a pilot, a reasonably trustworthy individual, there were I-beam-like pieces that had the weight of balsa wood, that you couldn't break them, burn them, or cut them, which is not balsa wood, obviously, and had strange symbols along the inside. Pastel symbols, weird ones. The second kind was this foil-like material, sort of like aluminum foil, but you could crumble it up and it would uncrumble on its own, which was very strange, and you couldn't cut it. And there was other stuff that you couldn't break, real lightweight, high strength, couldn't break through with a sledgehammer. Now, none of that fits the Mogul balloons. Mogul balloons did have tape about this big, not this big, that supposedly had colored symbols on it. But the balloons themselves, the radar reflectors made out of foil, any child could tear them.
So you're satisfied that is not a good explanation?
Well, we talked to the chief engineer on Mogul back 14 years ago, C.B. Moore. We had to throw it out then. It didn't fit.
But as I understand it, the reports that emanated from the newspaper and from the people that collected the debris early on described them very much like tinfoil, like wooden sticks. And it's only 20 or 30 years later that people begin to talk about the great tensile strength of this stuff.
Not so. The original report was the rancher who was pre-programmed, Mac Brazel, the rancher, who came into town on July 6th, was brought back to town. His story was programmed for him by the government. That changed this into this balloon business. That was a second story.
Stanton, we have a map here because you saw in the piece I was walking out on a ranch where they call that the impact site, but there's other areas around there. the crash site in Roswell there, but there's other areas around there, the Corona site, for instance, where they say they also found some debris. So we're talking what kind of area where they found debris in?
Well, okay, there's no basis for that crash site 30 miles north of Roswell, Frank Kaufman's site. That's one of these bandwagon jumping things. The debris was certainly found on the Foster Ranch, which is about 70-some miles northwest of Roswell, just outside of Corona. It's 192 miles from Roswell to Albuquerque, 192 miles of nothing, by and large.
I was there, I can attest to that.
You can agree with that. So apparently the bodies were found a couple miles away from that. At the same time, over 160 miles west of there, in a strange area called the Plains of San Augustine, west of White Sands Missile Range, west of Alamogordo Army Airfield, there was another crash. Bodies were found there as well. Two separate crashes at the same time, probably a mid-air collision.
We have a viewer on the phone here, Stanton. They might have a question for you. Go ahead, you're with us here on Town Hall.
Yeah, I have a question. Given the hundreds of thousands of light years it takes to get to the Earth, why would they get here and then hide?
Well, wait.
Let's let Cal answer that one.
It would take a considerable amount of time.
Sorry, sir. Nobody can tell us how many hundreds of thousands of light years to get here. A light year is a measurement of distance. That has nothing to do with time. Unless you have an extraterrestrial ship or one of your own that can actually travel between planets, you can't say how long it takes to get here.
But why would they hide?
Why would they not
who says they're hiding?
Why would they go the complete distance from another solar system or planet and then hide around, play cat and mouse?
Well, I don't talk to the squirrels in the woods behind my house most of the time. I'm here for my purposes. These guys are here for theirs. But let's not talk about this nonsense about hundreds of thousands of light years. Within 54 light years of here, there are 1,000 stars, of which 46 are very similar to the sun. And some are 1 billion years older than the sun, and some have other sun-like stars only a few light weeks away instead of out in the boondocks where we are. They're here to do their thing. What do the mice in the labs think about the professors who are running them through mazes? I mean...
Yeah, I have another comment to make is on the fact that how these alien abductions, like you would say that could relate to like Roswell. If there are UFOs, they would be the same type of thing, a UFO encounter or a crash or whatever. It would be proof of UFO.
I think
how would you like relate those to like you could relate that to like demonic possession.
Well, I think I know what he's saying. He's basically saying, let's say there's some UFOs out there. Why don't they just land halftime at the Super Bowl or something? Why do they always seem to
Obviously, that's not their purpose in coming here. Why are they coming here? One of my papers is 26 reasons. They're broadcasters, the weekly show, Idiocy in the Boondocks. They're on their honeymoon. They're being punished. 2 weeks near Earth is punishment to last a lifetime.
Cal, why don't they just show up in public somewhere then?
I don't profess to know or say, I don't think anybody can. It's just that you have to look at the data, meaning what's going on here, examine the data, period. Speculation as far as why they're here. Abductions aren't proof of anything. They're a story, okay? Without anything to back them up other than somebody's word for it, you've got nothing.
Now, there are physical traces on people, though, and there are 4,400 physical trace cases involving flying saucers.
I was referring to abductions. What I mean is when somebody says they've seen something, unless there's something to back it up, science unfortunately can't quantify what it is that they've saw. Science has very high and different standards of evidence than our legal system does.
Okay, we've got to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're probably going to talk about one of the most controversial aspects of this whole Roswell incident. You may have seen the footage of an alleged alien autopsy from Roswell. Is it fact or fiction? We're going to take a closer look with the experts right after this. Well, this is the hangar where some witnesses claim alien bodies were sent after being recovered from the New Mexico desert in 1947. Now, if bodies were found, would they have filmed it? And what are the chances that 50 years later that film would turn up? Welcome back to Town Hall. There's a man named Ray Santelli, a British promoter, and he has footage of an alleged autopsy on an alien being. He claims it was filmed in the late 40s by a former American military photographer. Let's take a look at this. And you're going to see what maybe looks like doctors, I guess, in some kind of protective suit studying a very strange being, no doubt about it. Are the images real, or are they some kind of elaborate hoax? And that's what we want to examine right now. I believe this came out in fall. It was broadcast on Fox television. Real or hoax? We have some folks who look at it from a technical side, folks that are in the production, the film production industry, the video production industry here in Portland. And I guess I'll start with you, Greg. We'll take a look at that again, and I know you've had a chance to study it. Your gut feeling on it, based on what you know technically about film and video.
Well, my gut feeling on it is that it is, there's nothing about the footage that is conclusive. It is something that could be authentic. I mean, it looks like what it is, but it also something that could be fabricated by people who know how to work in the film business.
Tom, you work for Will Vinton Productions, and you manipulate different things all the time. You look at something like this. What's your gut reaction?
I think I'm skeptical. It could be. I think it could be faked.
Could you do something like that at the Vinton Studios, maybe?
Not me personally, but we have a very talented group of sculptors and casters and mold makers, and I think they're capable of doing.
What do you
something
think,
like
Greg?
this.
Could your outfit do something like that?
We don't necessarily have the expertise ourselves, but the people exist that do have the expertise, and if you had the money and the desire to make something like that, then yeah, you could do that.
Okay, let me bring you into the mix. Tell the folks who you are.
My name's Deborah Guinness.
Okay, dear. You look at this, and what's your gut reaction on this?
Well, I have to say that instinctively I want to say no, I don't believe it. But when I look at it, I think I have to agree with Greg that it's definitely doable. The technology, I think, exists. You can make dummies and you can sculpt organs and so forth, but there has to be a really good motivation. And financial motivation could be one, but it would take a lot of time and effort, I think, to make such a tape.
Okay, we heard the technical expertise from the video and film. Is it authentic? What is it? I want to hear the medical expertise, and our good friend Larry Lumen, Multnomah County Medical Examiner. Larry, you look at that picture, could that be, what's your gut reaction, I guess?
Well, it could be a real autopsy footage. I don't know about the extent to which it may or may not be doctored, but it's not an autopsy on alien.
You don't believe it is?
No, I think there are both medical and common sense reasons why it's not.
You know, this is supposed to be from the 40s, this film we were looking at, and I know you had a chance to examine it before you came out here and looked at it closely. What about the medical equipment they're using, those suits and some of the tools they're using? And their technique, I mean, because we've never been in an autopsy room, at least I hope most of us haven't.
Well, certainly some of the equipment was around in the 40s. Some of the technique would suggest it's more European than United States with some of the incisions.
Now, what would make you say that? Just the technique they use?
The incision starting high in the neck is something that's not conventionally used here. That's not to say it couldn't be done here. Mm-hmm. But most of that has been a practice in Europe more so than here.
You know, I hate to say this, but could that be suppose it is somewhat real, could that be a human person? I mean, even though it doesn't look anything like a human, would there be any condition where that could be a human person that looks like an alien?
A whole bunch of them. I think, first of all, if you're going to debate whether this is human as we know it, you look at the common features, or the consistent features. I mean, it's got a head, it's got two ears, it's got two eyes, it's got a nose, it's got a mouth, it's got nipples and arms and legs and an abdomen. Mm-hmm. So in that sense, it resembles a human. The abnormalities, of course, are the numbers of digits, namely the fingers and toes, the disproportionate size of the head, and the lack of hair and extra, sex types characteristics. Now, there are a whole host of word medical entities. Polydactyly is the term we use for multiple fingers and toes. A whole host of chromosomal abnormalities can cause that. I went to my weird syndrome book before I came here, and I found 21 where this can occur. There are probably, I won't see most of these in a whole medical career, and neither will most physicians. There's probably a whole number that haven't even been named yet, which this can occur. With respect to the head, there are a whole host of craniofacial abnormalities, many of which are chromosomal. This could be. Certainly hydrocephalus is something that we don't see too much now because the neurosurgeons have shunt procedures to treat it, but it was very common in the 40s, and it can be caused by injury, child abuse, congenital abnormalities, infection, a whole bunch of things. And basically what this is a blockage of the cerebrospinal fluid from above the base of the skull, again caused by a variety of different conditions.
Let's take a phoner here, Larry, with a viewer that's been interested by your comments. Go ahead, you're with us here on Town Hall.
Yeah, I just wanted to say I'm a student of special effects. That's the field I'm trying to get into. And I remember watching a broadcast of the autopsy when it first came out, and they talked to a top-notch special effects team that said that practically no one in the industry has had the ability to do a fake autopsy as well, like the evenness of the blood as the skin's peeled back from the bones, things like that. And the amount of, if they were able to do it, the amount of money it would have cost, the way it's been released, no one made any money off of it hardly at all. No one's really received credit for the technical effort.
Well, just a second. Stanley kind of went, oh? Stanley, what do you...
Stanton, well, there's no question that Fox paid out $200,000 for the privilege of using the footage. The videos have been sold all over the world. Some of this footage has been shown in 34 countries, and none of that was for free. So there have been people who made money, but the footage, there are a lot of things that haven't been talked about that unless you see the whole length of the footage, you don't get a full appreciation of. Somebody has done a body proportions approach, length of limbs, width of shoulders, and it matches Earthlings perfectly. And one possibility, there is one disturbing thing, and I think the doctor will agree, there's no belly button. And all Earthlings supposedly have belly buttons. So, but what it could be is a male used as the mold, and he didn't want his genital area covered with this gunk that you use. So they built up a belly and didn't put a belly button in it. But the widths of the shoulders, everything about it, the peculiarities of human physiology, in other words, are perfectly obvious. I should add, nobody who's connected with the Roswell story, and Mr. Santilli has said, well, it was over near Socorro in May 31st, 1947, which would mean it had nothing to do with Roswell. But nobody connected with it has described beings like that. 4 fingers, no thumb. This has 6 total. So it doesn't match. The wreckage doesn't match. You didn't see much of the wreckage here. You didn't see any. But
well, let's go to Cal here, because Cal, you're actually being paid to chart this authenticity of this videotape. What have you discovered so far?
Well, I'm about 3 months away from finishing my analysis, just because with my book out and the amount of detailed work I have to do, it takes about 6 months. I'm about halfway through it. But the reality is Kiviat Productions, which did the show, gave me everything that they purchased from Santilli. So I'm the only person, for better or for worse, that has the stuff. And there's stuff in there that I've seen that they haven't aired yet. Kiviat seems to want to get to the bottom of it now. The guilty party in here that's playing games is Ray Santilli. And I have found evidence in the footage both for and against its authenticity, but Kiviat at least has allowed this stuff to air on this up special.
What way are you leaning right now as of tonight? I know your investigation isn't complete.
At this point in time, if it were over, I would say, because I found conclusive evidence of digital manipulation, that it cannot be real footage because that technology did not exist. And having been on Apple's HyperCard team or Claris's HyperCard team, I'm a slight computer nerd. I know digital manipulation when I see it. The film grain quality on it was embellished by increasing the contrast. There are patterns on the frames that if it were real film grain, they would not be identical from frame to frame.
But you'll come out in about 3 months with your final
Yeah, right now
analysis.
my draft of the report's about 128 pages, and that's before I've finished the rest of the frame of the analysis.
You think it'll be as thick as that Air Force book when you're done?
I don't know. But I'm looking forward to getting the data out to the public, because for the first time ever, we don't need to depend on Ray Santilli anymore to get to the bottom of it, and that's all I really care about.
Okay, we're going to take a quick break. Did you know that this whole Roswell incident is one of the hottest things on computer? The homepage, the Roswell homepage, it is hot, hot, hot.
It's a hot topic, and we're the only place in the world that can lay claim to it.
And is the government hiding evidence of UFOs? Results of our town hall telepoll still ahead tonight. Stay with us.
And little things like the UFO puts your town on the map.
Welcome back as Town Hall investigates the mystery at Roswell. A little thing like a UFO does put a town on a map. Did a UFO really crash in Roswell? 50 years later, the question draws hundreds of people a year to the New Mexico desert and millions every week to a new website on the internet. Take a look.
It completely blew us all away here in here in the office.
Jim Fuller created the Roswell webpage 2 months ago. Within a few weeks, it ranked in the top 10 of the most popular internet sites in the world.
There's on an average of 30,000 requests per hour, which totals out to 720,000 per day.
You heard right. He said 720,000 per day. So what's made the Roswell webpage an international hit?
We're using the alien mystique, I guess, and running with it. And after people find out that it's not just another UFO page that's filled with the same pictures that you find all over the internet, they actually want to stay here and learn more about Roswell.
Browsers get their Roswell UFO fix and a lot more. They also learn the history of the area, a rundown of the town's cultural events, and a list of motels. But Jim Fuller pays a price for the page's popularity.
Somewhere in the neighborhood of 700 letters per day, email messages per day, that I have to go through and weed out.
Wow, can you believe 700 email messages a day, 30,000 requests a day, an hour, boy, 700-something thousand a day. Isn't that incredible? That is the interest this Roswell incident has generated across the country and the world. Now, I was down there in Roswell, and I got to tell you, they are the greatest people, and I really, really love this man named Hub Korn. Who is Hub Korn? Well, Hub used to just be a rancher out there, but a few years ago they said, Hub, on your land is the impact site where this UFO crashed, the main impact site. And so here's a little time we spent with Hub Korn. Listen up. What did you think when they came to you and said, Hub, on your land is where this UFO crashed? What did you think at first?
Well, I kind of thought they was full of bull right at the beginning. When it hit, well, then it kind of sat back down. Up there higher is supposedly where one of the little men was sitting on a rock, sitting there, kind of whether scratching his head or whatever, you know, trying to figure out what to do next. I've had you know, people from all over the country. I mean, they've been here from England, Japan, Germany, France, all over the States here. They want to go over there and they want to pick up a rock and, you know, they want to dig around. And some of these psychic type people, you know, come out here and they, whether or not it's true or not, I mean, they get down there and they get over there next to it, and this one lady, she said, man, the hairs are standing on her head and everything, you know, and I don't know. She really went to screaming and carrying on down there, so I don't know.
I tell you, I just fell in love with old Hub Korn. Something about Hub. Hub charges you $15 to get out to that site. And since we're a television crew, he charged us a lot more to go look at that. But you know, Hub has to stop his ranching duties when duty calls. But you know, let's face it, and you folks who've been to Roswell, there are folks in that town making quite a bit of money off this. People writing books making money. Stanton,
hey, I wrote a book.
I know. But
I haven't made a lot of money. I haven't paid for my research costs yet.
But let me ask you an honest question. The folks that are really into the Roswell incident, writing books about investigating, are there some people there who want to keep the mystique going just to make money off of it?
Yes, there's no question about that. Two of the books are by a man who's written 78 books of fiction. Apparently nonfiction pays better. Written with a postal clerk who was claiming to be a medical illustrator but isn't. Yeah, and there's no question. And Hub, I got to give him credit. He says, you want to come out, fine, pay the freight. He had to buy insurance and stuff like that. His family, who's been there for generations, and there was not even the slightest rumor that this happened there. There's no question about one of the other locations out on the Foster Ranch, which is much further out and much harder to get to, and nobody's going to take you tours out there. So, yeah, but the museums, the Walter Haut, for example, all the members of the board of the International UFO Museum and Research Center, 4th and Main in Roswell, it's a nonprofit institution. They're not paid a dime. It's all volunteers. They've had more than 70,000 visitors there in less than 4 years. And they've got a lot of stuff there. And yeah, they're selling mugs.
Yeah.
You know, and the big celebration will be next year, 50 years. I was there for last year's celebration. It's become a tourist attraction. There's no question about that.
Steve Carey, you think some of this just generates so folks can maybe make a little dough off of it, or a lot of dough?
Oh, I think there's little doubt that that's true.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Cal?
Yeah, I think you're right. It's in my current book, the last chapter is about the case and some lessons learned, and my main message is think critically, folks. In other words, it's like the Kennedy assassination. No one questions how it went down. It's an issue of which conspiracy killed him, right? So years later, you've got people coming forth saying, I was there. Truth is they weren't there. We hear there's over 500 Roswell witnesses now. That's impossible. So it's out of control. I think we need to go back to the beginning, start over, separate the signal from the noise, and I'm in the hunt to try to separate
and be objective.
Absolutely.
And call me if you know anything about the case and we're really there and can back it up.
We got to take another break here. We're going to have more on Roswell just ahead here on Town Hall on this Sunday night. And still to come, viewers sound off to our media coverage of our wild weather. That was the subject of Town Hall last week. Stay with us, everybody.
I don't feel we needed coverage from 5:30 in the morning till midnight at night. We needed to know the information, but I don't think we needed to be bombarded by it.
Take a look at this. These are pictures from the Hubble telescope, sent back these amazing pictures of what scientists think are the most distant and oldest galaxies ever captured on film. Now, those aren't UFOs. Those are something that we deal with. Mother Nature's absolutely fantastic. The galaxies out there, everything, outer space. Tom, forget about the Roswell incident just for a second. But with all those galaxies out there and all the numbers that they throw around, billions and millions, and isn't it possible there is life on other planets? Doesn't it just seem like most likely there is? How do you come down on that?
Well, I mean, we're one planet around one star, one of 9 planets around one star that has life. I think anything's possible. I mean, it's just, you would almost be foolish to say it wasn't possible.
Now, some of the astronauts have seen some strange things.
They have seen things. Unfortunately, it's like everything else, though. Nobody seems to have any evidence, and the astronauts are the same as the people on the ground here. They're just as human as you and me. If there is life elsewhere, as well as the ones supposedly that have landed here, I think the scientific community would love to get their hands on some of it so we could actually prove its existence.
One of our town hall viewers, George, here had an interesting take on the whole thing. He said if this thing crashed and there were alien bodies and there were spacecrafts, your question is how they move this darn thing, right?
Well, it's not a question. I looked into it. You could not have moved an object the size of the alleged UFOs at that time. I was involved in the aerospace industry for many years, and we had to move large objects for one program or another. I talked to the Heavy Haulers Association in Washington, D.C., to several other organizations that were involved in moving things. In 1947, you could not have moved an object, a discoidal object, say 25 feet in diameter or larger, and we have claims of disks crashing up to 100 feet in diameter. You could not have moved those from the Roswell area to Wright-Patterson Field or even to Langley Field. We had no planes, we had no trains.
Didn't have the technology then?
No, we did not. And we did not have the highway system. People look at I-84 and I-5 when they're dry, of course, and see all these things going up and down them, but those trucks aren't as big as you think they are.
Let's get some thoughts on this. Why are you convinced, Mr. Friedman, why are you convinced that there is a cover-up and there's definitely something there?
Well, I showed you some of the documents. I've been researching UFOs for 38 years. I've been to 15 archives. I worked under security myself. There's no question, the documents prove it, that government agencies are withholding data, facts, reports, documents. Anybody who says there isn't, my CD-ROM. If you want everything you always want to know about flying saucers, I wish all those 700,000 people would buy one.
Cal, final thoughts from you. Why? And when? Why should we still question?
Because whatever UFOs turn out to be, ultimately, answer-wise, we can only benefit from that answer. Let's assume, just for the heck of it, that there's nothing to it. It's all some delusion of ours. We have nuclear weapons. We would need to know whether we have such delusions. So we can only benefit by studying UFO cases. Minimum, insight into how we work. Maximum, maybe life visiting us.
Okay, and the name of your book again?
Spaceships of the Pleiades, the Billy Meyer story. It has a science in there on how to investigate UFOs objectively.
Steve, we'll let you wrap it up for our experts here. What would you tell viewers tonight?
Well, I think it would be marvelous if there had been contact. I think the highest likelihood is that when there is contact, and there may well be at some point in the future, it will be electronic contact, not personal contact. And I would only ask that the other side in this debate keep an open mind, as I'll try to do. If the evidence suggests that you're wrong, well, at some point.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Of course. We're going to take a break, but stay put because we're going to have results of our telepoll, everybody, when Town Hall continues on this Sunday night. Do you believe the government is covering up evidence of UFOs? Final results here. When we come back, you can call in, your last chance. You guys have cable television. Welcome back to Town Hall, everybody, talking about the mystery at Roswell. Here are the results of our telepoll tonight. We asked it at the top of the hour, do you think the government is hiding evidence of flying saucers, UFOs? Well, most folks say yes, they are. Isn't that interesting? Almost 4,000 viewers have called in. The Roswell story has reached a whole new audience since we first aired this program, thanks to the blockbuster movie Independence Day. It's about an alien invasion of Earth with the Roswell Incident and its consequences at the heart of the action. If you want to talk salaries that are out of this world, look no further than the NBA. Our Town Hall hot button this week, the multi-million-dollar figures athletes and agents are throwing around right now in contract talks. Michael Jordan's latest contract is a reported $25 million for 1 year. And broadcast reports say Kenny Anderson may sign a 7-year deal with the Trailblazers at $50 million. We want to hear what you think of these superstar sports salaries. Do they deserve it, or is the whole thing out of control? We'd like to hear from you. Call our producers at 736-3415 for your chance to talk back about this hot button issue or anything else you see on Town Hall. And here's how you reacted to last week's hot button on a fantasy video store opening near 3 schools on West Burnside.
Young minds are pliable. The fact the laws do not cover this and protect children from very young into high schoolers is what corruptors like fantasy video are using.
I think it's a free world, and he should be able to open up a business anywhere he feels he can open up a business as long as he's not hurting anyone and no one is going into his store that's not supposed to be there. Then leave the man alone.
Give the guy a break. We're adults. Adults and fantasy and fantasization is very healthy.
I don't think the adult video stores or anything like that should be anywhere near the schools or anywhere near the towns. Put them someplace out there in the middle of nowhere if you have to have them.
Hello. I think you should let business owners do their own thing. After all, this is America, isn't it?
And here's what you'll see next week on Town Hall.
Whenever a man does something for a woman and she didn't have to ask you, that's romance. Okay?
The best-selling author of Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus reveals his secrets to a happy, lasting relationship next week.
Thanks to all our guests, and thank you for watching. Good night, everybody.